It's official, fall DIY season is here. Wait till you see what we're making. Let's get crafting. Grab yourself a mason jar. You want to make sure it doesn't have a lot of branding on it. This one just has the word ball on one little section of it, so that's perfect. I'm starting by spray painting this with some white paint to act as a primer so that when I do go in and paint it, it will stick and adhere better and just give it better coverage. Once I was done spray painting this, I let it dry really good and then found my, I guess, lightest tannest color paint that I had. And I painted on 2 coats of this paint, making sure that I let it dry all the way. Now it's time to sketch out a face. So you guys really liked my Scarecrow blocks. I had more requests for Scarecrow projects, so this is going to be another Scarecrow project. So I did my best to sketch out a face. I added some eyes, I did the nose, I added stitching to this one, a mouth, and then of course some cheeks. Once that was sketched out, I grabbed my paint markers and went in and started filling it up. So for this, I ended up using a white paint marker, black, orange, and pink. And I just went in first and just kind of filled it all in, and then went back and added details like little stitching marks and outlining things just to kind of make it look more refined. To finish this off, I grabbed some florals that I had in my stash and I began arranging those inside of my mason jar. And then I also had a Dollar Tree floral leaf thing that had some pumpkins that I also worked in there. Then I took some raffia and I just cut a bundle of it, some strips, and using one of these glitter Dollar Tree bows, I trimmed off the tails on it and then put my bundle of raffia behind it, because what it will look like, since I obviously added eyelashes to my Scarecrow, it'll look like a little bow and her hair coming out of it. So once I got the florals in there and I got the bundle of raffia attached to my bow, I just hot glued that directly on there, and then this little Scarecrow vase is all finished. I'll be using 2 pieces of the scrap wood that I had in my garage for this project. And this is just a 2x4, and you'll notice at the top, I wasn't trying to get a perfect pointed triangular top. I wanted it a little, I don't know, whimsy, kind of off-centered, because these are going to turn out to be more of a whimsical fall craft. Now to do that, I did use my miter saw, but you could use a jigsaw. You could also just use a miter box if you don't have any power tools. I started by grabbing some black paint and started painting both of these blocks on all sides. I was going for probably about 90 to 95% coverage. I did want a little bit of the wood to show through to kind of give a little bit of a distressed vibe. Now, I want to show you this because this was my original plan, and you guys know I like to keep it real. So what these blocks are turning into are crows. And so I had these little wooden round pieces from Dollar Tree that I thought I could paint and use as the eyes. And then I had the little wooden plaque thing also from Dollar Tree that I could cut with my 10 snips miter shears and cut a kind of triangular beak. After I did it, I just really wasn't digging matching the vibe. And so I decided to go ahead and sketch out the eyes and the beak with a pencil. Now, again, I am trying to make these a little more on the whimsy side. So as you can tell, my eyes are not the same size. They're kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, like just kind of cuckoo. I don't know. And then I also sketched out the beak. I grabbed paint markers using an orange paint marker for the beak, black and white for the eyes, and then of course I used some white to add some highlights here and there, and I just sketched that all out and then filled it in with my paint pens. To finish off the crows, I grabbed some twine and I wrapped it around 3 times and just kind of wrapped it willy-nilly, just where it was crisscrossing, and then I tied it off and secured it in the back, trimming off the extra pieces. And then I had these little sunflowers and decided to just hot glue one of those on there, and then that was it. They were both finished off this way, and I think these are so cute. These will be added to my Scarecrow wood blocks. Let me know down in the comments, do you want me to try to come up with yet another wood block fall DIY? For this project, you will need a canvas. Now you can grab any size canvas that you want. I am using an 8x10. You can pick these up at Dollar Tree. And I'm also using 2 different fabrics. Now there's other options. I'll share that a little later on once we get to that step. But for now, let's get started. So the first thing is you want to take a piece of fabric. You're going to be covering the actual canvas with a piece of fabric. So cut down a size. It needs to be a little bit bigger than the canvas so that you can also wrap the edges of the canvas. And then this piece of fabric is actually going to go, when we flip the canvas over, inside the canvas. So I'm just pressing it down with my mini press to get out the little creases. And then we're going to start by applying our smaller piece of fabric to the inside of our canvas. Now you want to make sure that your piece of fabric is a little bit bigger than that actual space inside the canvas. It will slide very easily up underneath the canvas frame, no problem. So take some fabric Mod Podge and attach your piece of fabric to the inside of the canvas. You do not need to put Mod Podge on top of the fabric, just get it attached to the canvas with some Mod Podge. Now it's time to take that other piece of fabric and attach it to the canvas. You want to take your Mod Podge and apply it to the canvas along with the sides, and then just make sure you pull it tight and wrap it around. Now the other options that I mentioned earlier, you don't have to put fabric on this part or on the inside of the canvas. You could use scrapbook paper. Just make sure it is a very thin scrapbook paper. It's not a heavy cardstock scrapbook paper. You could also just paint the canvas on the inside and this outside of the canvas as well. And in case you don't know what we're making, it's called an exploding canvas. So once I've got my fabric wrapped around, I'm just going to secure it with a little bit of hot glue, and then we're going to start, I guess, exploding the canvas. Now taking a box cutter or a very sharp hobby knife, you want to start making cuts in your canvas. So start in the center and you just want to start cutting. I mean, they can be rectangular strips, triangles. Just work from the center of the canvas, cutting all the way until you hit the frame, the wooden frame of that canvas. That's how you'll know that you've made enough strips. So I just went in, once I made that initial cut with my box cutter, then it was easy to get scissors in there and just, like I said, cut willy-nilly strips. Once all of the pieces are cut, and like I said, cut all the way to the wooden frame, like when you're making your cuts, you should either have your scissors hit or the blade hit that frame. That's how you know you've gone far enough. You want to start just rolling these back and then tacking them down with some hot glue. Now, there are so many options here. You could definitely take a little more time to fray the edges of the fabric. And again, like I mentioned, you could use fabric for this, you could use scrapbook paper for this, or you could even paint as well. So I'm just going to take all of my strips and go around just kind of curling them and then securing them to the frame of the canvas with some hot glue. For the printable that's going inside our exploding canvas, I found this gorgeous graphic on Creative Fabrica. I will have everything linked down below in the description box, so just check down there for anything that you are looking for. And I trimmed it up, and what's nice about this is I printed it on cardstock. You definitely want to print it on a sturdy paper. It will slip very nicely on top of the frame and right underneath that fabric. Now, it took me a minute to figure out how to get it in there. But here's the trick. Once you trim it down to the size that you need it, just cut the corners, and then you'll be able to slip this in very easily into the canvas, and now you've got a very unique fall piece to display with your decor.
Young, and we didn't want to be exposed, even though it was cold.
Grab a lantern, and the one thing you want to make sure of, it's something that you can easily take the glass plates out of. I picked this one up on clearance from Hobby Lobby for $3.99. Start by taking out the glass plates. Once those are all removed, then I'm going to take this out to the garage and spray paint it. I want to make it a little more fall, so I'm using some of this Rust-Oleum hammered spray paint to get it coated with a nice fall color. The next thing you'll need is some printable vellum. I just got this in a huge pack from Amazon for pretty cheap. It's linked down below in the description box. And then of course I've got more graphics here from Creative Fabrica that I found. I wasn't quite sure what route I wanted to go. I liked this, I think they called it pumpkin scrapbook paper, and I thought maybe I'd do all 4 sides with that. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll do one pumpkin on each of the sides. And what I ultimately decided to do was 3 of the sides to do the pumpkin scrapbook paper option, and then on the door of the lantern to do one of these pumpkins with all the florals around it. So all I did was take my glass panels and I put them on the vellum, traced around it, and trimmed it down with my Fiskars paper cutter. To get the vellum attached to the glass, I used the Barely art glue just because it has such a tiny little precision tip. Now, the way my lantern was set up, when I put my glass panel in, there's overlap of the lantern on the glass panel. So I knew that when I attached glue to my glass, it wasn't going to show. So that's something you need to look at when you are taking your lantern apart. Is your whole glass sheet going to show? And in that case, you kind of need to be a little more aware of where you're placing glue. But if not, then just make those adjustments as needed. Once the lantern was dry and the glass panels were all good to go, it was time to just stick those back inside. Now, as far as what you put back inside of the lantern, if your vellum is on the inside of your lantern like mine is, do not use an actual fire burning candle. Now, if you placed your vellum on the outside of the lantern, then you certainly could put a real candle in there, but I don't want the vellum to catch on fire and then to have some sort of situation at my house. So fairy lights are going to be a good option. A battery candle will also be a good option to set inside the lantern. To finish it off, you could leave it plain just like this. Of course, you could add florals. I grabbed my bow maker and some fall ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby and just made a bow to kind of add a little something extra to the top. But this is going to be so gorgeous, especially at night when it just kind of has that frosted glow with all of the pumpkins shining through the lantern.
Wearing proper clothes, always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, smoking cigarettes behind the school. Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, you know. I still think about what we had when we were younger. We were never running out of time. As long as we had each other, everything was black and white.
You need 2 wooden blocks, different sizes here. I'm just using some 2x4s that I had in my garage. I grabbed some Waverly chalk paint in the color Cashew, and I'm going to be brushing this on there. I'm not going for full coverage. You certainly could if you wanted to. I'm just using the top to kind of help get off the extra paint because that will not be visible once these are displayed. So I'm just going to brush this paint on until I like how it looks. Once the blocks were dry, I grabbed a pencil and sketched on some scarecrow faces. So I made eyes that were kind of teardrop shaped, a triangle nose, and then just a squiggly wiggly line for the mouth on each of these blocks. Then taking some paint markers, I filled in the eyes with black. I did the mouth black and then the nose orange. I did go back and outline the nose and add some little stitch marks to the nose as well as the mouth, and then a little pop of white in the eye just to give it a little extra something. Here are what the Scarecrow faces look like. You could add eyelashes to one if you wanted to. Now we need to make the hats and the hair. So taking some raffia, I just took some hot glue and I glued down strips of raffia to the top of the block, making sure that it was kind of long so that I could trim it as needed and shred it as I needed to. Once the pieces of raffia were glued down, I took a piece of burlap and I hot glued it all along the top and wrapped it around. Then I cinched it in and tied off the top. And once that was tied off, I just kind of shredded that top, kind of pulled at it to make it look a little more rustic-y, just pulled some of those loose burlap fibers to get it done. And then this one was finished. I did the same procedure for the second one, except I used a dark brown piece of burlap. I hot glued it around the edge and then again cinched it, tied it off, and just kind of shredded the top of it. And now these two cute scarecrows are ready to go.
Traveling in a car, never knowing how far we go. When we were younger, oh, when we were younger, I remember a girl, I would sneak into her parents' house.
Here's a fun DIY with one of these styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree. So the first step you want to do is pull off that stem, and what we are going to make is a faux quilted pumpkin, kind of like that Christmas ornament that I made at Christmas, well, in July video that was just posted recently. We're going to do that with this pumpkin. So your first step is to take a hobby knife, X-Acto knife, whatever you've got, and I just followed the ridges on the pumpkin. You want to cut into the pumpkin from the top of the pumpkin all the way down. And once I did that, I went back in with my Cricut spatula to kind of make those grooves a little bit deeper. Then I found this cute fall quilted fabric from Hobby Lobby. I got it this year. And I needed to make my pieces of fabric. So for that, you're just making it, I guess, kind of a leaf shape. And what I did is I just measured with a piece of vellum that from the top of the pumpkin to the bottom, marked it, and then I made sure to make the width of it a little bit wider than the actual grooves that are on the pumpkin, because when you go to shove the fabric, you're going to need extra fabric on your pieces. So I cut all of those out. And then I had a suggestion on my last video when I did do that ornament. Someone said, try just doing the fabric one at a time, whereas in that Christmas ornament, I had them all pinned and then just kind of went in and overlapped. So I just did one piece of fabric at a time. It worked great. And I just used my Cricut tool. I'm telling you, that thing is great. I've used it twice now in this video without using it with my Cricut. And I just shoved that fabric in there. I did not add twine to the ridges. You certainly could do that if you wanted to. But once all of the fabric was tucked in, then for the stem, I grabbed 4 of these little wooden rounds from Dollar Tree and glued them together. And then I just took some raffia, tied a bow, hot glued that, and now I've got a faux quilted pumpkin with faux quilted fabric, which I think it is so cute.
And we looked into each other's eyes. Hey, I thought I was Romeo, I was looking for my Juliet. And as soon as I left, I told
This DIY, I grabbed some of these pine cones. These were actually sent to me from one of my subscribers. It was a surprise one day. I opened up my P.O. box and they were in there, and I absolutely love them because they look like roses. And so I thought, you know what? I want to make some kind of fall, I guess, candle holder using these pine cones. So I started first by pulling them all out. I wanted to try to get them grouped by size so I could see if I actually would have enough to make what I was thinking. I also grabbed one of these flat wooden rounds. They came in a pack from Hobby Lobby, and this is just a Bath & Body Works candle. I have tons of these, so I want to make sure that I can have enough of these pine cones to wrap around the candle, but I want to be able to obviously take the candle in and out so that as I burn the candle, I can always put another one in there. So once I figured out, yes, I do have enough of these pine cones, I knew I needed to do something else, and that was to add some leaves. So I had some burlap leaves in my huge stash, and I pulled out all the orange and green ones and just alternated the colors. So it did orange, green, and I hot glued those down so that they overlapped just a little bit. Once the leaves were down, I was ready to start attaching my pine cones. So I just added some hot glue to the pine cone, I glued it down, and as I worked my way around, I kind of just kept twisting it and making sure that that candle was there so that I would be able to take a candle in and out of this little candle, I guess, display piece. And that was the last thing I did, and I absolutely love the fall vibes this gives. Grab an orange cone from Dollar Tree because we are turning this into a cornucopia. Now, obviously, it's not quite the right shape, so I knew I was going to have to manipulate it a little to get it that way. So the first thing I did was grab my scissors and I trimmed some of that extra off at the bottom of this orange cone just to make it rounded, but I definitely wanted to keep an edge around the end of this cone. Then it came time to figure out how to shape this a little bit. So, of course, I was like, ooh, I'm going to grab my heat gun and I'm going to bend it because I'm Wonder Woman and it's all going to work out. No, I mean, honestly, I was using my crafting heat gun and the whole time I was like, okay, you probably should be wearing gloves. And then I was like, this heat gun's not even going to get hot enough. Do I really want to try to bend plastic? So I ditched that idea and said, I'm just going to have to cut this up and kind of piece it back together to get the shape that I need. So I cut it at an angle and realized once I did that I was going to be able to very weirdly piece this thing back together to get the right shape that I needed. So it definitely needed to be at an angle to make this work. And what I realized is that I was going to need to use some popsicle sticks along with some tumbling tower blocks to kind of just add the extra security. So I trimmed kind of a little extra piece that was off. And then as far as the pointy part, I stuck it in there and I used some hot glue to get that in there along with a tumbling tower block to kind of anchor that in place. So what I did was just take one of the tumbling tower blocks, use my miter shears to cut it in half, add some hot glue, and then stuck that in there. And what it's doing is it's securing the two pieces together. So as you can see, it kind of lifts up in the back and it's forming the shape that I need. And so I just add some extra tumbling tower blocks, make sure it is definitely stuck there so that I can add the popsicle sticks to kind of fill the gap on the bottom portion. Now I had to add my support to that gaping hole there at the bottom. And to do that, I just grabbed some of these orange popsicle sticks that I had in my stash. I believe they're considered the large size, not the jumbo, but the large size. And I cut 3 pieces of popsicle stick and I just hot glued it to kind of fill that gap, because what's going to happen is I'm actually going to end up wrapping this with some rope. And if I didn't, that rope would kind of go there into that little hole and then the shape would be all wonky and it wouldn't look right. So I'm just securing these pieces of popsicle stick with some hot glue. So now it's time to just wrap this. Now you definitely could paint this first if you wanted to, or paint the inside. I kind of like that it was orange inside with the whole fall color vibe. And I decided I was just going to be really careful about pushing my rope together so that hopefully the orange won't show through. So up to you if you want to paint it, but you're just going to take some type of rope. I just got this big roll from Amazon and I'm just securing it with some hot glue all the way until I get to the end. And then once I'm at the end, I just kind of wrap it into itself to close off the end of this cornucopia. Now we need to finish this off, and to do that I grabbed some of the dark brown nautical rope, and starting on the bottom of the cornucopia, I am just going to glue once around, kind of just at the bottom of the, I guess, the lip. You know how I talked about cutting the circle around it? Yeah, there's kind of like a little bit of a lip there, so I'm going to take some of this brown nautical rope, glue that all the way around that base. Then I'm also going to glue around the front part of it, because most cornucopias do kind of have a two-tone thing going on, and it's a little bit bulkier and a little bit chunkier at that part of the cornucopia. So that is the look I am going for. The last step was just to stuff the cornucopia, and to do that I started with a little bit of moss that I hot glued down at the bottom portion. I grabbed some of those florals, some pumpkins, some corn, and just kind of shoved it all in there, and then voila, I've got myself a orange traffic cone cornucopia.
I've been feeling so small. Watch the clock ticking off the wall, but tonight I'm letting it go. Spend my coin for sure.
I've got one of these Dollar Tree wooden chalkboard signs that I had painted orange on the frame. I've also got my big box of wood embellishments. You guys know I love to keep all of them in here. And I was looking for some fall items to put on this sign. I messed around with a couple different options, and in the end decided to use some of the leaves that I had. These came from Hobby Lobby. They were already painted and colored, which made it really easy. So what I did is, in the bottom left corner of the sign, I grabbed 3 leaves and I just hot glued those to that corner. Then at the direct diagonal at the top right part of the sign, I used the same 3 leaves, the style of the leaves, and I hot glued those down again. Now for the words on my sign, I really am loving my gold paint pen, so I grabbed that out again, and I decided to write fall in cursive and then just the word vibes. So here's a quick little hand lettering trick for you when you're writing cursive. To kind of give that thickness to the letter, you always thicken on the downslope. I don't know the technical term for it, guys, sorry, but basically as I'm writing the F, I go up, and then you can see as I'm coming down on the F, I'm thickening that. So anytime your pen, while you're writing cursive, is coming down, that's the part of the letter that you actually want to thicken. So just a little tip there. So I did that, and then that's it. I kept this super simple. So this will be fall, you can use it for September, and then flip it around and use the other side for October. Grab a sheet of orange felt and cut it into 1-inch strips. So I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and cut it until this entire piece of felt has been cut into strips. Then taking a piece of twine and a needle, I'm going to take my first strip and fold a little piece of it. We're going to do kind of an accordion style here. Run my needle through it. Once I get that run through there, I'm going to take a bead, feed that on, then fold the felt again, run my needle through it, then put on a bead, and continue that process till I end up with it looking like this, 5 little humps. And then I'm going to add another bead and do one more strip of felt the exact same way, where I fold it, run it, put a bead on, fold it, put a bead on, until it's completely attached. Then once both of these are on there, I want to make sure that those loose pieces of felt are connected. So I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue to get those 2 pieces connected so that it's a nice seamless piece of felt. And once that's finished, then to finish it off, the easiest thing I found was just to take my twine with the needle and run it through that last bead, and then squirt some glue in there to kind of hold it in place. And then I just trimmed off the extra piece of twine, and now I'm left with this little circular napkin ring. Now you definitely could use this and turn it into a garland. You could add extra colors. So there's a lot of options here. You could add some little embellishments, a little wooden piece, a pumpkin, other things to it. But for now, I'm just keeping it kind of simple, just something a little different this year for my fall tablescape.
Those days made me who I am. When we were younger, we were never running out of time. As long as we had each other.
I grabbed some wooden spoons for this next project. You might remember a couple years ago, I made these really cute Christmas spoons with my favorite thing, faux sprinkles and brown hot glue. Well, we are going to make a fall version. You definitely could leave these neutral colored, but I grabbed 4 colors. I grabbed orange as well as a brown paint, a yellow paint, and then a black paint. Now you need your colored hot glue sticks and your faux sprinkles. So I grabbed brown hot glue. I'm going to use orange hot glue and then white. I had thought about using the yellow, but when I squirted it out, it was kind of transparent and I just didn't really like how it looked. And then I just sprinkled on some coordinating sprinkles. A tip with hot glue, especially if you're working with hot glue and faux sprinkles, is when you squirt the hot glue on, if it starts to harden or it's not smooth or it's clumping up, if you're doing like a big area, just take that heat gun and just run it over the hot glue. It'll get it all melted together again, nice and smooth for you to be able to put sprinkles on there. So I'm just going to add the glue and sprinkles to each of these spoons. I cut out my words on my Cricut and did 4 different words. I did turkey, boo, thankful, and grateful, and got all of these words attached to the ends of each of the spoons. To finish off these spoons, I grabbed some purple polka dotted ribbon that I had in my stash from Hobby Lobby, and I hot glued that one to the Halloween spoon. And then on the turkey spoon, because there was a little bit more space there on that handle, I just tied up a twine bow, hot glued that, and left the other 2 spoons plain. And now these are perfect size to add to a tier tray or just a little bit of extra decor in your kitchen. Grab this pumpkin from Dollar Tree and start by taking the raffia bow off. You can save that for later to put it back on. And then you need to grab some brown wax. Now, I am choosing to use brown wax, but you definitely could use paint if you wanted to. What this is going to turn into is a gorgeous faux stained glass pumpkin. So with the brown wax, I painted the pumpkin, I guess on the back piece. I did not paint the 3 raised pieces. And as I painted on that brown wax, I just took a baby wipe to kind of wipe off that excess wax. Now again, you definitely could leave it natural if you wanted to, or you could even paint it if you'd like. Now we need to make a template of these 3 pieces here because that's what's going to turn into the faux stained glass. Now this is just how I like to do it. You may have another way. If you do, definitely leave it down in the comments. Always looking for good tips and hacks. But what I like to do is just take a piece of chalk and outline the edge of these 3 little pieces. This works with any sign that has a raised wood piece. You just want to outline it with some chalk, then take a piece of cardstock, place it down on top. Preferably make sure the cardstock is a little bit of a darker color so that you'll be able to see the chalk. Rub all over the cardstock, and then when you flip it over, that chalk design will transfer, and now you have the exact templates you need to cut down the paper. Now, I know some people will put paper on there and then just do the kind of filing off the edges. That's another way you could do it as well, but I don't know. This is the way to ensure that they will fit perfectly. So I've got my template pieces and I'm just going to cut these out so that I can use these to get my stained glass ready to be applied. Now, here are the stained glass graphics that I have got. I wasn't quite sure which one I wanted to use. I will definitely link these down below in the description box if you want to grab those, along with everything else from today's video. I printed these images out on vellum paper. You guys have seen me use some vellum paper for different crafts recently, so definitely a good investment if you want to pick some of that up. And once I picked which design that I wanted to use, I took those template pieces, placed them down on the vellum paper, and then I did use Scotch tape to tape them to the vellum paper, because when you trim around the template, that Scotch tape isn't going to end up showing. So it was just a way for me to keep that template steady. And I cut out all 3 of these pieces so that I could get them applied to the pumpkin. It's time to get these pieces attached. Now, I used Mod Podge to attach my pieces to the pumpkin. I personally would not recommend this. I did do a very, very thin coat, and I knew I was taking a risk. The vellum is just so thin, and I should have I wouldn't recommend it. I would suggest either using a glue stick, or if you do want to use Mod Podge, let it dry completely, and then take your stained glass vellum pieces, set them down, and then take either a piece of parchment paper or a piece of Teflon sheet if you have that, and then apply some heat to it and activate the Mod Podge that way, and it might work. I did end up with a few little wrinkles, but honestly, they're not that noticeable. But again, I would probably choose a different type of glue at this point. But once those are attached, I did not put anything on top of it, and then I just reattached that not twine, but the raffia bow with some hot glue, and this just turned out so pretty. I absolutely love how it looks. Here's a tray from Dollar Tree, and I just started by grabbing some orange paint and painting it to give it a distressed look. While the tray was drying, I grabbed this pumpkin. I actually got this in a huge pack from Amazon, and I like it because A, it was cheaper than doing it from Dollar Tree, and they don't have the holes in them. So I took some scrapbook paper that I had from Hobby Lobby. It's one that they always have, and I traced around my pumpkin and then attached the scrapbook paper to the pumpkin with a glue stick. So at this point, the pumpkin is going to go inside the tray, and after I realized, I was like, you know what? No, this is not going to work. So I grabbed that orange paint and went ahead and painted the whole thing so that it had full coverage. I took my Gorilla Glue, strong adhesive glue, put that all over the back of the pumpkin, and then set that down on the tray along with some bottles of paint just to help it adhere, and made sure that's set up. I wanted to add another detail to my tray, so here's a quick little crafty tip for you. So I have these very small half wooden circles. They're flat on one side. So I'm going to stick them on some painter's tape and then kind of secure that down to my table. And then I can just take this really pretty gold paint that I have and paint them, and they don't wiggle around and roll about, and you don't get your fingers messy. It's a very good little trick to painting these types of items. Once those were painted, I added 4 to each side of the tray on the edges. So I just used hot glue to get those attached and worked my way around attaching these little gold half wooden circles to the tray. The last step was just to add a bow to the pumpkin, so you could just use this and display it, or you could actually use it like a tray and put some additional fall decor on it and put it in your home. I've got a double pumpkin sign here from Dollar Tree, and for this one I just need that back pumpkin, so I separated the 2 pumpkins, and then I originally was going to make a candy dish. That's why you're seeing the tray here, but I did change my mind and decide to do something else. I just kind of smoothed out the paper there and removed the raffia bow. Then grabbing a piece of scrapbook paper that I had in my stash, traced around the pumpkin, and then using a glue stick I applied the scrapbook paper to the pumpkin. Now you need some type of small sign or even a wooden box lid from one of those wooden boxes that Dollar Tree has. And what I'm going to do is just take some of that brown wax and I'm just going to paint the inside of the side along with the sides. The actual sign portion is not going to be visible, so you don't have to worry about either staining or painting over that. Then what you want to do is attach this wooden box, I guess, to the pumpkin. I just used some hot glue, attach it to the base of the pumpkin, and then I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to reuse that raffia bow. I had some of these little pumpkin slices that I made last year, if I wanted to embellish any more, and I decided to just keep it simple, so I tied a twine bow and hot glued that to the stem portion of the pumpkin. And then this is just going to hold a candle. This is, every season I like to make a decor piece. I kind of have this little memorial shelf to my mom, and so this is going to be this year's fall piece. I'm going to put this candle in here. This was actually a gift from Shannon, the Daily DIYer, after my mom passed, so I just thought this was a cute, simple little piece to kind of make my mom's shelf a little more festive. Pick up one of these fall wall decor pieces from Dollar Tree. They have a couple different versions to choose from. I started by taking off the twine and the beads and then grabbed some orange paint and painted the entire thing orange, and then realized, hey Courtney, the stem needs to be brown, so I went back in and painted the stem with brown paint. Now at this next step, just to kind of show you how my brain works when I'm doing projects, I pulled all the things. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted this project to go. I had all kinds of different little mini pom-poms. I pulled different sizes of twine because this pumpkin has kind of some grooves in it, and I didn't know if attaching pom-poms into those grooves would make them kind of sink down. In the end, you cannot tell at all, but y'all, I was all over the place. I thought, okay, maybe I'll put twine in the grooves of the pumpkin. And so I went through all kinds of different things. I went through many different colors of pom-poms. It was a whole thing. And then I was like, Courtney, get your life together and just commit. So what I ended up doing was I started with just these orange pom-poms that I got on Amazon in this huge bucket. Using some hot glue, I went in and just started gluing down my pom-poms. So I started first, like I said, with all the grooves because I wanted to make sure I kind of had that curve. And then from there, I started filling in the rest of the pumpkin with mini pom-poms, just using hot glue to get those attached. So here is what it's looking like right now, but we need to finish it off and just get all those little extra details done. And for that, we want to add some pom-poms along the edge of the pumpkin. So I'm going to go in with some brown and just hot glue brown pom-poms on the stem of this, and then go all the way around the pumpkin, gluing some more of those orange pom-poms on there. It's just one kind of singular row all the way around. And now we have made ourselves a cozy mug coaster. Notice that I said mug. I would not put drinks on this that tend to sweat. This is just for those cups of coffee, cups of tea, cups of hot cocoa. And now we need to finish it off. So one thing I would recommend is to do this step before you add the pom-poms to your pumpkin, and that is just to add some of this cork to the back. This is just one of those little cork sheets from Dollar Tree. That's a sticker. So I just did my best to kind of size it, and then I trimmed it down, stuck that to the back of my coaster. And then the final step was to spray some Scotch Guard on the pom-poms just to protect them from stains. I usually like to do this on these types of projects. It's optional, but I would recommend that. And now you've got yourself a cozy mug coaster.
I'm gonna let the sun shine in today. I'm trying to make this darkness go away. I'll paint with colors and I'll sing until my
You'll want one of these Dollar Tree styrofoam pumpkins for this project, and I started kind of carving it up, not really knowing what I was doing, but then I realized, okay, this is what we need to do here. Cut a hole at the top of the pumpkin as well as the bottom of the pumpkin. Now this is a very simple DIY. We are just going to cover this with some of this fun yarn, this chunky yarn. I got this from Michael's. They have all kinds of colors, white, gray, you could do green, and I am just going to cut strips tuck it into the hole and then bring it down around the pumpkin and then tuck it in there using hot glue to secure it. I am going to just do each piece individually, and I'm going to continue to go all the way around this pumpkin until it's completely covered. For the stem, I'm going to use some of these wooden round pieces from Dollar Tree. I'm going to hot glue 4 of them together and glue this and kind of stick it into the pumpkin. And then I'm going to leave it simple. You could definitely add a bow or some florals to this if you wanted to, but I absolutely love this little fuzzy pumpkin. Grab 2 flat canvases from Dollar Tree and some wooden apples. First thing I did was take my miter shears and trim off the stem and leaf of each of these apples. Then taking some Gorilla wood filler, I filled in the holes on the apples, and then it was time to get painting. I painted one of the apples green and one of them red. You will need some brown hot glue along with some faux clay sprinkles for this next part. So what you want to do is take that brown hot glue and we're going to apply it to the tops of the apples. Now do not worry if this gets clumpy, if it starts to harden, if it looks all willy-nilly, wonky, because the trick to this, getting it to get all smooth and look like melted chocolate, is once you've applied all of the hot glue, just take your heat gun and run it across and it will start to make it a seamless, smooth surface that looks like hot glue. Well, it does look like hot glue, but it is melted chocolate. Faux melted chocolate, but it still looks like melted chocolate. You definitely could use puff paint. I know some people use that. I just prefer the glue because it has that sheen and I just feel like it's a little more realistic looking. Once you have smoothed out the hot glue with your heat gun, then take those faux sprinkles and drop them in there. Probably a good idea to have a pair of tweezers to kind of place some if you need to do that, but do this to both of the apples. The next thing you need to do is glue 2 popsicle sticks, 1 to each of the apples. I just flipped them over and kind of glued the popsicle stick about halfway up the back of the apple and did that to both the apples. Then taking some green and white checked ribbon as well as some red and white checked ribbon and some twine, I tied bows and decided to put the green and white checked with the red apple and the red checked with the green apple. And then I also tied a little bow with twine and hot glued that to the popsicle sticks on these apples. The last step was just to attach these to your white canvases. And these cute little signs would be great on their own in the kitchen as decor, but if you wanted to pull together a gift basket, you could make that caramel apple charcuterie board that I made last year. I will link that video down below. You could put all the toppings in the basket and then make these cute little signs to put in there, and it would just be the cutest little gift basket.
I'm gonna let the sun shine in today, and I will leave my windows open so that I can hear the sound of people talking and the wind blowing in the trees.
Now this coffee cup sign from Dollar Tree, this is the first year I've seen it. It is quite large, and when I saw it, I thought, okay, we're gonna do something really fun with this. If you see it, grab several because you can make this for so many different seasons. The first thing you have to do is pry off the little coffee cup sleeve. Using your heat gun, it will come off. It does take a little while, and when I finally got it off, I destroyed mine, but I pieced it back together. I was able to pry the pieces that were left behind, kind of hot glue it and make it work. You definitely could just kind of get rid of the ridges in there if you wanted to, or you could cover this up. You don't have to keep this, but you as is, meaning the pumpkin cut out in it, but you do need this piece removed. And to do that, I just used my heat gun. I love this heat gun. It's on a stand, so that's very helpful. I was able to kind of just maneuver it around the heat gun, but like I said, it did take quite a while because I don't know what Dollar Tree uses for their glue, but it is very strong. Now, for the next step, there's lots of options. You could leave this as is the color that it is. You could stain it, you could paint it, you could add scrapbook paper. So I started by painting it, and I painted the cup portion, the bottom part orange, painted the lid white, and then I decided, oh, you know what, I have some really fun scrapbook paper. So you don't need to paint this and then add scrapbook paper, you just need to commit to one of them, but I just I really didn't know at this point what vibe I was going with. So that's why you're seeing me paint it first. So here is the scrapbook paper that I had. It came in a pack from Hobby Lobby, and all I did was take the coffee cup and trace it onto the back of the scrapbook paper. I cut it out, and then I kind of placed it to trim the extra part at the top to make it kind of sink in or fit nicely with the lid. I did leave the lid painted white. I didn't add anything to that. And then I used a glue stick to get the scrapbook paper attached to my cup. For the coffee cup sleeve, I did take some orange paint and I gave it a good coat of the paint. Now you need to grab yourself some popsicle sticks. I had these that were already orange, so that is why I'm using them. And what this is going to turn into is a gift card holder. So we're going to be attaching these popsicle sticks to the back of this little coffee sleeve so that we're able to slide a gift card down into it. And what you want to do is you're going to attach a popsicle stick. I'm just using 10 snips because it's easier to cut these popsicle sticks sometimes with 10 snips. And you want to cut them down so that you can put a popsicle on each side of this little coffee sleeve along with the bottom, and then it'll kind of lift up from the main coffee sign, allowing you to slide a gift card down in there. So that is why I fought so hard for this pumpkin little window, I guess you could call it, so that you could see the gift card in there. If you cover it up, that's fine. Just make sure whoever you give it to knows that there's a gift card slipped in there. But I'm going to use some Gorilla Clear Grip, the strong adhesive glue, to get these attached. And then once those are attached and I figure out exactly where my gift card is going to slide, I do take some more popsicle sticks, I trim those down, and I add that so that there's kind of like a little, I guess, I don't know, it's sized to the gift card, so the gift card will slide in perfectly and hold in one place. It won't move about inside of that little coffee cup sleeve, if that makes sense. Time to add the finishing touches. So I hot glued down my coffee cup sleeve to this, and then I took a paint marker and I just went in on the lid and just added some lines to kind of define it and give it a few details. Then I had filled in the hole on this with some wood filler, but decided, you know what, I want the hole back. So I poked through that and grabbed a cardboard tag that I had and just hand wrote a little tag and tied that up to there. And then the last thing you need is just to put a gift card in here. And again, you could make this for all the different seasons. It's such a cute way to give gift cards.
Oh, I will open up my eyes so I can see the light. Oh, and I'll try to spread my wings so I can fly. Oh, and the darkness starts to fade. Feels like things are gonna go my way. I'm gonna let the sun shine in the day. I'm gonna let the past be.
You need 2 wooden blocks, different sizes here. I'm just using some 2x4s that I had in my garage. I grabbed some Waverly chalk paint in the color Cashew, and I'm going to be brushing this on there. I'm not going for full coverage. You certainly could if you wanted to. I'm just using the top to kind of help get off the extra paint because that will not be visible once these are displayed. So I'm just going to brush this paint on until I like how it looks. Once the blocks were dry, I grabbed a pencil and sketched on some scarecrow faces. So I made eyes that were kind of teardrop shaped, a triangle nose, and then just a squiggly wiggly line for the mouth on each of these blocks. Then taking some paint markers, I filled in the eyes with black. I did the mouth black and then the nose orange. I did go back and outline the nose and add some little stitch marks to the nose as well as the mouth, and then a little pop of white in the eye just to give it a little extra something. Here are what the scarecrow faces look like. You could add eyelashes to one if you wanted to. Now we need to make the hats and the hair. So taking some raffia, I just took some hot glue and I glued down strips of raffia to the top of the block, making sure that it was kind of long so that I could trim it as needed and shred it as I needed to. Once the pieces of raffia were glued down, I took a piece of burlap and I hot glued it all along the top and wrapped it around. Then I cinched it in and tied off the top And once that was tied off, I just kind of shredded that top, kind of pulled at it to make it look a little more rustic-y, just pulled some of those loose burlap fibers to get it done. And then this one was finished. I did the same procedure for the second one, except I used a dark brown piece of burlap. I hot glued it around the edge and then again cinched it, tied it off, and just kind of shredded the top of it. And now these two cute scarecrows are ready to go.
Traveling in a car, never knowing how far we go. When we were younger, oh, when we were younger, I remember a girl, I would sneak into her parents' house.
Here's a fun DIY with one of these styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree. So the first step you want to do is pull off that stem, and what we are going to make is a faux quilted pumpkin. So your first step is to take a hobby knife, X-Acto knife, whatever you've got, and I just followed the ridges on the pumpkin. You want to cut into the pumpkin from the top of the pumpkin all the way down. And once I did that, I went back in with my Cricut spatula to kind of make those grooves a little bit deeper. Then I found this cute fall quilted fabric from Hobby Lobby. I got it this year, and I needed to make my pieces of fabric. So for that, you're just making it, I guess, kind of a leaf shape. And what I did is I just measured with a piece of vellum that from the top of the pumpkin to the bottom, marked it, and then I made sure to make the width of it a little bit wider than the actual grooves that are on the pumpkin, because when you go to shove the fabric, you're going to need extra fabric on your pieces. So I cut all of those out. So I just did one piece of fabric at a time. It worked great, and I just used my Cricut tool. I'm telling you, that thing is great. I've used it twice now in this video without using it with my Cricut, and I just shoved that fabric in there. I did not add twine to the ridges. You certainly could do that if you wanted to. But once all of the fabric was tucked in, then for the stem, I grabbed 4 of these little wooden rounds from Dollar Tree and glued them together. And then I just took some raffia, tied a bow, hot glued that, and now I've got a faux quilted pumpkin with faux quilted fabric, which I think it is so cute.
And we looked into each other's eyes. Hey, I thought I was Romeo, I was looking for my Juliet. And as soon as I left, I told my friends.
Grab a piece of felt, and what we want to do is cut this into 1-inch strips. So I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and cut it until this entire piece of felt has been cut into strips. Then taking a piece of twine and a needle, I'm going to take my first strip and fold a little piece of it. We're going to do kind of an accordion style here. Run my needle through it. Once I get that run through there, I'm going to take a bead, feed that on, then fold the felt again, run my needle through it, then put on a bead, and continue that process till I end up with it looking like this, 5 little humps. And then I'm going to add another bead and do one more strip of felt the exact same way, where I fold it, run it, put a bead on, fold it, put a bead on, until it's completely attached. Then once both of these are on there, I want to make sure that those loose pieces of felt are connected. So I'm just going to use a little bit of hot glue to get those 2 pieces connected so that it's a nice seamless piece of felt. And once that's finished, then to finish it off, the easiest thing I found was just to take my twine with the needle and run it through that last bead, and then squirt some glue in there to kind of hold it in place. And then I just trimmed off the extra piece of twine, and now I'm left with this little circular napkin ring. Now you definitely could use this and turn it into a garland. You could add extra colors. So there's a lot of options here. You could add some little embellishments, a little wooden piece, a pumpkin, other things to it. But for now, I'm just keeping it kind of simple, just something a little different this year for my fall tablescape.
Those days made me who I am. When we were younger, we were never running out of time. As long as we had each other.
Grab a mason jar and start to wrap it with your choice of material. You can use twine, you could use yarn, you could use ribbon, you could use rope here. I just found this big spool of this really nice rope that I got on Amazon. It actually works out to be way cheaper than Dollar Tree. It's very good quality. So I'm going to start by wrapping this, and I want to start at the top. I'm not going to wrap the, I guess, lip of the jar, but I will start with some hot glue and start securing it, at least that first wrap around, and then as I go down, I will secure it here and there using some hot glue. Now grab a couple different fabrics. This mushroom one was from Dollar Tree. The orange polka dot one was from Hobby Lobby. Grab some felt, whatever you have. I'm going to use 3 different things here. So I'm going to use a strip of this mushroom fabric that I cut about 1 inch wide, and you want enough that will wrap around the top of the jar, plus it kind of hangs down a little bit. So it's just going to depend on what size jar you use as far as how long your piece of fabric needs to be. And the more this gets roughed up, the better. So I just cut a strip of this one, a strip of the polka dot one, and then for the felt, I had some leftover scraps from when I made those napkin rings. So I just glued 2 pieces of felt together. And once I got all the strips, I started with the polka dot one and I secured it to the back of what's going to be the back of the jar, and I wrapped it around and then just kind of crisscrossed it and tacked it with some hot glue. Then I did the same thing with the felt. I stacked that on top, I tacked it to the back and then crisscrossed it, tacked it with hot glue, and then I did the same with the mushroom fabric. Once that was done, at this point you can fray it, you can cut it up. I kind of ripped some of the pieces of fabric. You want to get it to a kind of shabby chic homespun type vibe. I found these 2 packs, they're calling them burlap stickers, at Dollar Tree, and decided to go with the one that had the more loopy petals. And pulling a yellow felt leaf that I had in my stash that originally came from Hobby Lobby, I just glued that to the jar, glued my flower to the jar, and now I've got a different way to display some fall florals.
And I will try to fix what has been broken and take this weight off my shoulders, 'cause I know yesterday ain't coming back. I'm gonna let the past stay in.
You need some type of lantern that you can remove the glass panels from. I got this one on clearance from Hobby Lobby for $3.99. Start by taking out the glass plates. Once those are all removed, then I'm going to take this out to the garage and spray paint it. I want to make it a little more fall, so I'm using some of this Rust-Oleum hammered spray paint to get it coated with a nice fall color. The next thing you'll need is some printable vellum. I just got this in a huge pack from Amazon for pretty cheap. It's linked down below in the description box. And then of course I've got more graphics here from Creative Fabrica that I found. I wasn't quite sure what route I wanted to go. I liked this, I think they called it pumpkin scrapbook paper, and I thought maybe I'd do all 4 sides with that. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll do 1 pumpkin on each of the sides. And what I ultimately decided to do was 3 of the sides to do the pumpkin scrapbook paper option, and then on the door of the lantern to do one of these pumpkins with all the florals around it. So all I did was take my glass panels and I put them on the vellum, traced around it, and trimmed it down with my Fiskars paper cutter. To get the vellum attached to the glass, I used the Barely art glue just because it has such a tiny little precision tip. Now, the way my lantern was set up, when I put my glass panel in, there's overlap of the lantern on the glass panel. So I knew that when I attached glue to my glass, it wasn't going to show. So that's something you need to look at when you are taking your lantern apart. Is your whole glass sheet going to show? And in that case, you kind of need to be a little more aware of where you're placing glue. But if not, then just make those adjustments as needed. Once the lantern was dry and the glass panels were all good to go, it was time to just stick those back inside. Now, as far as what you put back inside of the lantern, if your vellum is on the inside of your lantern like mine is, do not use an actual fire burning candle. Now, if you placed your vellum on the outside of the lantern, then you certainly could put a real candle in there, but I don't want the vellum to catch on fire and then to have some sort of situation at my house. So fairy lights are going to be a good option. A battery candle will also be a good option to set inside the lantern. To finish it off, you could leave it plain just like this. Of course, you could add florals. I grabbed my bow maker and some fall ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby and just made a bow to kind of add a little something extra to the top. But this is going to be so gorgeous, especially at night when it just kind of has that frosted glow with all of the pumpkins shining through the lantern.
Wearing proper clothes, Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, smoking cigarettes behind the school. Always trying to be cool, trying to be those bad guys, you know. I still think about what we had when we were younger. We were never running out of time. As long as we had each other, oh, everything was black and white.
Time to make a fall wreath. So I had this part of a hoop left over, and at first I thought I could snap that gray part off, and then I went ahead and cut it with my miter shears, glued the two pieces together, and then took some painter's tape to kind of secure it and make sure that it wouldn't pop apart. Now that I've got a nice complete hoop that I can use, I grabbed several different colors of felt, just fall colors, and started to just cut leaves freehanded. I didn't use a pattern. I didn't really make them all the same size. The main thing you want to make sure you do when you cut the leaves though is at the base of the leaf you want to make sure to have a nice wide section so that you can easily wrap it around the hoop. Now when you put these leaves on the hoop, you're just going to use some hot glue and just pinch them around. Just do the base of the leaf, put the glue down there, and I started just with my first, I guess, layer of leaves, and I went all the way around until the hoop was completely covered with these leaves. And then from there I just started to attach more leaves. There was no rhyme or reason. The more leaves you add, the better it will look, and I just started to do that until I got it looking how I wanted to. You could go in and add some wooden beads as berries if you wanted to. You could also make a smaller version of this and use it around a candle if you've got that. But here's just a simple fall wreath that will add a little bit of fall color to your home.
Listen to the ocean, let its unsaid words be spoken, and I'll let my mind be carried by the waves. Oh, I will open up my eyes so
That will wrap up the first fall video of 2025. Let me know down below which one of these projects was your favorite. Also let me know, have you made any of these projects yet? I am so excited for the fall DIY season, and what I would love to know is, do you have a really good fall treat? Please share down below if you do, because I am looking for some fun, preferably a little bit easy treats, but just some fun things that I can make little treat baskets with during the fall season. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Here are some more videos you might want to check out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!